And then they might as well provide a caricature here. It's better than nothing, rather than leaving fat up to complete subjective interpretation. Most people probably imagine someone who is morbidly obese from My 600-Pound Life when they're filling out this tool.
I guess to go over study number 2, this is the one that found higher mistrust of overweight physicians. Basically, it was like a sliding scale. The more overweight the physician was, the more mistrust, the less inclined to follow medical advice, and the more likely to change providers these patients were, depending on the providers. And I think this one used BMI as well. I couldn't find the full materials and methods, but we'll post these links in the description. So this one kind of made more sense to me because people who are looking at this, objectively, and with the, there is a real, a stigma against overweight and obesity out there. It would be ludicrous to say that no one can tell, no one pays attention to these things, because people do. People choose their mates based on these things to some degree. So it would be kind of silly to just ignore it and pretend that it doesn't exist. But the interesting part about this is they had a fat phobia module or quiz to establish weight bias and to see how that affected things. And they saw that the higher someone's fat phobia score was, the more bias they had towards overweight or obese physicians. So I figured we could go through and take this fat phobia test to figure out how fat phobic we are.
Yeah. So since you and I are both technically overweight, are we evaluating each other? Or I could even go so far and say, since my wife's BMI, even though she's 20% body fat, is in the overweight category, am I evaluating her when I fill out this?
Well, this says, listed below are 14 pairs of adjectives, sometimes used to describe obese or fat people. For each adjective, please place an X on the line closest to the adjective that you feel best describes your feelings and beliefs. So obese and fat, when I think of that, I'm thinking of an objectively unhealthy person, which is what you're going to have, 99% of the people that are in the obese category. So we were talking about rough percentages, and what do we decide on for, men and women as like a very clear, 100% of these people are going to benefit from reducing that body fat percent.
Over 35% body fat for females and over 25% body fat for males. And there's no reason why this fat phobia tool from Yale shouldn't say, for those who know, that fat would be considered a body fat over 35% for females, over 25% of males. And then they might as well provide a caricature here. It's better than nothing, rather than leaving fat up to complete subjective interpretation. Most people probably imagine someone who is morbidly obese from My 600-Pound Life when they're filling out this tool. There's a huge difference. If I imagine you or my wife or myself while I fill out this tool, I will fill it out one way. And if I imagine someone from My 600-Pound Life or the one of the TV shows, the reality television, it's a completely different way.
Yeah, you could have a caricature that is in a vehicle in a drive-through at a fast food restaurant, or you could have a caricature wearing a suit in a courtroom, which you're not really going to be able to gauge someone's BMI super well if they're wearing a suit. So
they should just have a picture of Kyriakos Grizzly looking at you like that. He's definitely not lazy, that's for sure. And that's what the first item is.
Yeah, so the first one is lazy versus industrious. The second word I think is going to be a challenge for the general population when you look at the average literacy and reading level. But for those of us that know what that means, I'm going to put this as a 3 because I'm pretty neutral. I feel that you can't really tell how lazy or hardworking someone is just by looking at their weight, because some people may work harder on their physique. Some people may work harder on their career. I really don't think you can tell that just from someone's weight or body fat percent.
Yeah, I'm a 3 for that one, and I'm a 3 for the next one as well, which is willpower versus no willpower.
What about 3? It starts to get a little spicy here.
Yeah.
Attractive versus unattractive.
If it's Kyriakos Grizzly or myself or you or my wife, I would give them a 5 for very attractive. But if it's someone that's morbidly obese, then probably a 2 or a 1.
Yeah. I'm going to pick a 2 because attractiveness is about more than just a body fat percentage. There are facial characteristics and body shape characteristics that play into attractiveness. Just, subjectively, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I'm going to give that one a 2. So I suspect that nudges my fat phobia score up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Next is self-control. Good versus poor self-control. I'd put a 3 for this as well. This is kind of repetitive when it comes to willpower, self-control, lazy.
Yeah. And it seems neutral because it's like self-control in what context? If you put self-control over dietary choices, then you would say, poor self-control. That'd be this end of the spectrum I would be more closely on. But just self-control as a character trait, neutral. Maybe this person has incredible patience and a lot of self-control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely true. Next is fast and slow. I assume this means running speed.
That's what I would speculate as well.
So you got to put a 2 or something like that for more slow than fast.
I mean, if I'm looking at someone who's, let's say a guy who's 25, 26% body fat, I'm going to have to give that a 1. I mean, if they're at 20% body fat, maybe I give them, a 2. And then as you move down, you kind of adjust the sliding scale. Generally, the leaner the individual, the faster the individual.
I give him a 1 if it's marathon running. If it is
a 40-yard dash.
Quickly going from getting out of your seat and running out of a burning house, give it a 2.
Okay.
Next on the list is having endurance or having no endurance.
And we were just chatting about running, and maybe they clustered these two together because you think fast, slow. Do they run fast or run slow? Do they have endurance or have no endurance? So as you mentioned, someone with a good 40-yard dash time may not have a good marathon time, for example.
Yes.
So the endurance, I'm going to have to give that a 1.
Yeah. For marathon running, I would give it a 1. Again, imagining someone from my 600-pound life. However, if it's for doing some light cardio or
coding,
if it's Brian Shaw pushing a sled,
strongman,
yeah, or Kyriakos Grizzly pushing a sled, then maybe it's a 5. But for what I think the intent of the purposes of this questionnaire, it's got to be a 1. It's running a marathon.
Yeah. I mean, endurance just has connotations of exercise with it. Like, I think that's the logical, like if you played the game where it's like, I'm going to say a word and you think of a word associated with that word. Say endurance. People like, oh, exercise, running. Like those would be your numbers you would see.
Yes. So instead of endurance or having no endurance, it would be rate how good someone who is morbidly obese with more than let's say 50% body fat at running a marathon. So that's a 1.
Yeah. Next we have active versus inactive. So this is again really hard to be anything other than physical activity is what comes into my mind. Maybe they're talking about active in the church, active socially, but
probably not.
I don't think so.
Activity. Yeah. I gave this a 3 actually. It does not specify the zone of the activity. It could just be that they walk or they dance or they do something that does not burn a whole lot of calories.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would be a little bit more likely to put a 2 here. Let's call it a 2.5 because in general, you'll see kind of an association, like if I'm looking at step count, which is a pretty good surrogate for physical activity, who's classified as sedentary versus active. And you'll see more people that are classified as sedentary in the obese category. So I would probably rate this one a 2.
Next is weak versus strong. This one is interesting.
I think I would actually rate them stronger rather than weaker. Maybe I don't rate it a 1, but a 2, because they're not strong men, but they are strong men and women.
Everything else being equal, weight moves weight. So I would say that's 2 means stronger. They kind of switched the numbers. So 2 is, I guess, a better score now instead of 4.
2 makes you less fat phobic. Right below that, we have self-indulgent versus self-sacrificing. And this is going to be a 3 for me.
3.
You really can't tell what people are sacrificing, either financially or in their work-life balance for their families. And I think what they want people to do, and they clustered this one, you'll see when you get to the next one, right above the question about food. So they want people to make that jump from, they indulge in food. But if just you look at self-indulgent versus self-sacrifice by itself, I'm going to rate it neutral. Can't tell about a person just by their body fat percentage.
I agree. 3 for that. Next one is liking and disliking food. Liking and disliking. I'm tempted to put a 3 here because it's specifically about liking food. There's a lot of people who enjoy food.
Yeah, and I think of the different subtypes of obesity here. So this is also debated. You have obesity physicians out there that will say that you can't say that someone stress eats because that's discriminating, and that's not true and it doesn't happen. But when you look at some of the scientific literature and the research that PhDs are doing, I think it's about 30% of people that have obesity endorse like eating as a coping mechanism. And they don't do that because they like food. They do that because it makes them feel better. So this one is almost too simple for a very nuanced subject.
Yeah. The next one is shapely versus shapeless. And I don't really know what shapely means in the context of aesthetics. Does that mean that they look more like a certain shape, like a triangle or an hourglass or a square or a pear? I just put a 3 for this.
Yeah, this seems like the same question as, attractiveness.
Then if they're trying to frame we don't need another one. Then.
Yeah, a bit redundant. And then undereats versus overeats. I think objectively anyone can say that someone who is obese is going to have a tendency to overeat. So I'm going to pick a 1 here.
Yeah, I would definitely say more of a predisposition to overeat rather than be very inactive. Yeah. So more weighted towards
you know what I just
too
realized?
Many calories.
If we go back and look, overeating is on the same side as being strong, which is on the same side as being inactive. So these aren't quite making sense to me as far as their scoring system.
Yeah, it's odd.
In any case, then you have secure, insecure. I rate this one neutral. You can't really tell about someone's competence level based on their body fat percentage. Nope. There are a ton of people out there that are very confident that shouldn't be, and then there are people that should be very confident that aren't in professional and other areas of their life. So can't tell it about somebody. Yeah. What's our last one?
Same thing for self-esteem. Can't tell with that either. That's neutral. It would be interesting if we repeated this, except instead of for obese or fat individuals, we did it for very skinny individuals, especially very skinny males, especially young, very skinny males.
You're talking about someone who has anorexia or a below normal BMI?
A borderline normal BMI without anorexia. Think about, let's say, a male between the ages of 16 and 26 that weighs less than 140 pounds.
Interesting to see if people are lean phobic.
My theory is that people would be more lean phobic than fat phobic, especially if it is young females rating young, skinny, but non-anorexic males on this.
Interesting. And looking at the key here now, this makes a bit more sense. It says for items 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, and 12, score as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then they did the reverse for items 1, 2, 8, 9, 11, 13, 14. So they did mix it up to try and randomize so that you're not like, oh, all the bad ones are on this side, all the good ones are on this side. I am curious what their impression of strong was. So strong is number 8. And number 8 is the opposite. So rating that is a 1 makes us not fat phobic. Calling a fat person or thinking of a fat person as weak would be fat phobic.
So if you're perfectly not fat phobic, that means that you will rate someone who's obese as having the best endurance and being the strongest and being the most active
And eating the least food.
and eating the least amount of food compared to individuals who are not. So then you're just phobic of everyone else who's not fat. A perfect score should be 3 instead of 1.
Yeah. And if you really do get, what would the minimum score would be, what, a 14 if you rated
And then you divide by
them as
14.
every single desirable aspect, your score would be a 1. So you're basically lying, because there's no world in which a person with obesity, a very high body fat percentage, is going to be eating the least food and be the most active. So if you get the best score, you're cheating on the test, or cheating yourself, cheating other people.
Cognitive dissonance would be what's happening. Anyways, that's very interesting. I still don't know what we have taken away from taking that score. I think we could do better. Maybe at some point we put together our own index, because somebody came up with this. These questions are not based on, there's not a reference that came from. They do show the book that they took this from. So this is reproduced from the International Journal of Obesity. So I guess if you and I come up with something better, maybe with our colleague, Dr. Martin, then we should publish in that journal.
Yeah. And you could even incorporate something like this. You have the polls that go out every once in a while in the social media spaces, the Twitter spaces, where it shows an obese person, and it says, how many of you think this person is lazy, yada, yada. And then that person's followers will say yes or no, this person's lazy. And then they'll ask the same question, the same person, and say, well, this person's already lost 100 pounds. And then you see very different metrics there.
Yep.
So context is very important. And you could probably do this with several different caricatures, situations, and you could probably delineate by specifying that these are, work activities or home activities, or strictly related to their physical performance capabilities and activity levels, and get an idea of how much that, objective data about how active and fast someone might be bleeds over into how they are performing at work, or what you're thinking of this person as a home life person, father, mother, etc.
Yeah, exactly.